R Rangaswami, founder Indiaspora, Jonathan Siddharth, founder and CEO Turing, Aneesh Chopra, Chief Strategy Officer Arcadia, and moderating this session will be Siddharth Zarabi, Group Editor, Business Today. Let's have a huge round of applause, please.
Thank you very much. I was wondering with back-to-back sessions if AI avatar or an agent could have done this job, but I'm up here, and thank you very much with this very fantastic panel on a subject that is very, very important. Hundreds of billions of dollars are being invested around the world on AI. India too, just 24 hours ago, one of India's largest companies, the Adani Group, has said $100 billion in data centers. Previously, $75 billion, a large amount of that going to the state of Andhra Pradesh, again in this space. Individual startup companies, I don't know how many of you managed to get inside the AI Summit. I went there, young founders, this company that many of us hadn't even heard about. Straight away, $1 billion being raised, $1 billion plus, all of this pretty much in the last 24 hours. But the critical question, ROI, return on investment. For a student, ROI is the numbers that he will get from an exam. For a business, it is capital deployed and the returns that are made. Set this ROI question in context, Mr. Rangaswamy. Why is it fundamental to this debate that centers around AI and the investments that we are seeing in it?
Thank you, Siddharth. Again, the key question here is, like you mentioned, hundreds of billions of dollars are going into data centers, into investing in LLMs, and the reward has been promised to come in the future. The question is, how long can investors wait for the rewards to be recognized? $1 trillion is going to be invested in data centers. That means the revenue of those companies have to be larger than $1 trillion. And if you look at the entire revenue generated by hyperscalers and the startups, it's less than, I don't know, 25, 50 billion maybe, being generous. So when is it going to reach that $1 trillion threshold to pay back the investors? And that is the key question. And I think there's so much euphoria here. I think there's definitely a bubble here. But good things can happen. The question is, how patient will investors be? How patient will the stock market be? And that's why ROI is so significant, because people are going to use AI if they see a return on investment. And that's what I hope we can have a good discussion here.
That's a very, very important point that you made. And as I come to you, Jonathan, explain to our audience here your perspective on ROI. Is there so much capital awash in this world, liquidity, that it's just going for the next thing without looking at what the return would look like?
Thank you, Siddharth. So I have an interesting vantage point because my company works with all the frontier AI labs like OpenAI, Anthropic, DeepMind, Meta. So we see the investment up front. And I would say this year has been an important year where AI has shifted from passing tests to doing real work, right? I think the ROI question maybe misses a bigger point, which is, if you look at digital knowledge work today, like across every industry, financial services, life sciences, retail, healthcare, every function in that industry, like software engineering, sales, marketing, every role in the org chart, every workflow that a human goes through, that's $30 trillion of digital knowledge work. That's the work that a human does in front of a computer and uses a keyboard and a mouse to get tasks done, right? And if you think about robotics, you can scale that up to 110 trillion, right? So today, with artificial superintelligence, we are reaching a point where these computer use agents can now do tasks that can span days. Pretty soon it'll be tasks that can span weeks. So it's going to impact every single job on the planet, right? And almost all the problems that humanity faces are intelligence constrained. It is, and what we have here is intelligence as an API. If you had abundant intelligence as an API, you could cure diseases, you could go to Mars, you could extend lifespans. So there's so much potential here. And unlike with self-driving cars, which was sort of a a hard failure problem for AI, where you have to get 100% accuracy or 99.99999 accuracy to deliver value. Here, these are soft failure problems. So even with today's models, there is so much value that you can unlock. Because many of these systems are human-in-the-loop systems.
Right.
And when we work with enterprises, we see that the work of a human has changed from doing the work to verifying the work of agents that are doing the work. I think we're about to enter a golden age of productivity. It's going to be incredible to be a human knowledge worker.
Okay, golden age of productivity. Anish, as I come to you, I got the sense from his answer that should we be even asking this question, right? If you're in the phase of discovery, when the wheel was invented, nobody asked the ROI question. Look where it has brought the world. So is that something that you would want to answer?
Yeah, let me just, a little context. I'm going to speak to this answer as a former policymaker
Yes.
in the US, and I want to just highlight the dynamics. 3 layers to this question. One, we had a chapter of this movie earlier when we did the digitization revolution, and we spent considerable sums of dollars to put dark fiber throughout our respective economies. And at the time, the ROI question was very risky because the utilization rate of the fiber when it was initially deployed was much lower. In today's infrastructure investment analogy, I think every GPU is accounted for. So the utilization rate of the infrastructure already exceeds what we saw when we had this prior discussion about bubble or not bubble at the infrastructure layer. Number 2, when we launched Startup America in the United States, one of the important policy objectives was to say all the job creation in the US going back a decade came from companies less than 5 years old. MR has been an entrepreneur his whole life. Entrepreneurship has been driving economic growth in the US story. But what often happens is the rules of the road of a particular sector change, and it's the entrepreneur that races to the future. That's an open question in ROI. As we get to the total addressable market of labor in various sectors of the economy, we don't know if we have the rules of the road quite yet to unlock that ROI on what is a human, what is a automation system supporting a human, and how should that mix be governed.
But do you even need those rules? If you were again,
yes,
you
do.
were the first CTO of the US government during Barack Obama's presidency,
Yeah.
but if you were again a CTO of the US government, would you even advocate the need for rules?
Let me explain. These are different rules. What I'm describing here, market enablement. So this Trump administration in the United States context has just created new rules to create essentially a more AI-powered healthcare delivery system. So by changing the way you reimburse, instead of it being a human's documented time spent treating the patient to something that's more about outcomes, you can unleash this AI revolution where you've got an army of AI agents supporting a doctor. You sometimes need enabling policies to unlock ROI. And my last comment, and I think this is another area of ROI, this is an area we're coming into this age of abundance. So we have to start asking more of a societal and multi-stakeholder question of ROI. There'll be capital deployed and earned, but there'll also be questions. What is the return on getting everybody educated at a gold standard? What is the help of accessing universal high-quality healthcare? And these are the 3 frameworks that I believe will make the ROI question central for the next decade.
Mr. Rangaswamy, hundreds of billions of dollars were blown up in the dot-com bubble. The financial meltdown, probably $1 trillion and more. If AI were to solve long-pending medical issues or new drug discovery 10 months instead of 10 years, then why should we even be bothered about asking that ROI question? This is so fundamental to humanity.
I agree, but it's very altruistic, right? At the end of the day, an investor wants to see returns, whether Jonathan or Anish say it's long-term going to be gainful for the economies, right? So there's short-term, long-term. So somewhere there has to be some kind of convergence where short-term investors go, we'll be medium-term investors, and the long-term people like Jonathan and Anish go, no, we'll come to the medium term. Yeah. So I think we need to move the horizon a little closer. That's what I'm advocating for, is refined objectives, refined ROI, that kind of addresses both the long-term needs of society, and I agree with you, there's 30, 50, $100 trillion of market space and TAM, as you call it, but how quickly can we achieve it? And can we pay back these investors? Or like the dot-com bubble, I'm not saying the dot-com bubble was bad, because out of the dot-com bubble, there was $100 billion spent by private capital, And out of that came companies like Google and all these companies that are now worth trillions of dollars.
The new empires of today were built out of the rubble of that era.
Exactly. And so the same thing can happen again. I'm just saying, let's bring some coalescence around
So
what
let
ROI
let
is.
me interject here, because we are here on the sidelines of the India AI Impacts Summit, and the speaker before said it's the first one in the global south. What is the path for India? Because this is a debate within government circles. How much money should the government commit? We have committed some money, but if you look at the size and scale of the Indian central government budget, it is not too much. What is the right path for a country like India? To you first, and then to both of you.
So I would say let's look at the dot-com bubble again. Most of the money that went into the dot-com bubble came from private investments. There were no big write-offs by government when the fiber and all this thing happened and they weren't utilized. I think the similar thing is happening here as well. I don't see governments putting that much money. It's data centers are being built by sovereign wealth funds. It's being built by investors. So if those data centers go dark, the guys are going to take the loss is not a government. It's going to be mainly private capital. So that's my take on it is I think governments should invest some money, but they're not going to be the primary investor in the AI boom.
Okay. Yeah.
So I have 3 comments to make. Firstly, I think India should invest in sovereign AI. And second, there are big implications for jobs and education. So I'll come through all that. So when I say sovereign AI, I mean, I think it's important for India to build its own foundation model that's fine-tuned by Indian citizens, Indian nationals, at least in post-training, where
Does Sarvam fit the bill? Because it's being launched. I mean, their latest work is being launched as we speak.
It could. I haven't dug into them deeply.
Okay.
But I think the future will be some type of a hybrid architecture where a government like India will have her own sovereign AI model. That model could be fine-tuned on proprietary data that the Indian government has. You want proprietary intelligence that's in the minds of the humans that work in government in India to be distilled into the models. You want to teach the model how to do proprietary tool calls, but still give the model the ability to talk to other frontier models, perhaps a GPT-5 or a Grok 4 or a Gemini 3, so the model can orchestrate and collaborate with other models where needed. I think this will be important, like to make the government more efficient, to better serve the citizens of India. It's important for national security. I think it's important for India to also be at the frontier of superintelligence. You have to be in control of your destiny. And a big part of it is being control of the data that goes into the models. The algorithms are relatively diffused across the industry. Compute, again, is relatively diffused. You can invest. I think data is where you'd differentiate. So you'd want to make sure you invest there. Second, I worry deeply about job displacement because there is a tsunami coming with superintelligence. Like every type of digital knowledge work that a human does in front of a computer is going to change. Not necessarily replaced, but it's going to change. Humans are going to switch from doing work to verifying the work of agents. So we have to train humans to help them adapt to this new way of working. And third, that comes to education. I think I worry even more about education because there's 12 years of humans sort of in the pipeline before they get into the job market. And these models are getting smart, like quarter over quarter. I think we have to fundamentally rethink education for a post-superintelligence world.
Okay, before I come to you, Aneesh, we had invited a lot of students. All I want from you here is, for those who think that AI is a worry to your future job prospects and that you need to retool, please raise your hands. Okay, so I hope they heard my question right, but not many seem to be, at least not the majority of this room seem to be worried. But your take on this?
Let me just say at the outset, capital is flying where it's economic highest and best use. So I don't know if a government contribution in addition is necessary. I'm with MR on that. But let me just make a couple of observations. Almost 15 years ago, President Obama came to India and we did an expo on what was at the time the beginning of the Aadhaar revolution and DPI. And when President Obama observed all of this, he had one word to say to India: leapfrog. There was an opportunity to leapfrog into the next generation what this infrastructure would mean. And if you remember, in the COVID pandemic, in the US, we were still handing out paper cards to give people the vaccination records. In India, that was all digital. Leapfrog. So I say, what motivated me to the AI Impact Summit was the impact message, was that we're going to unlock the use cases that will drive the greater good. The question you posed was a worrying one. Are you worried? What if the entrepreneurial spirit of this country created the conditions to train people on how to be better at prompting AI tools to do their job even better? And this became the center of excellence for how to cross this chasm so that we get to jobs abundance, even if we're thinking about the tsunami on the other side. So impact in healthcare, impact in skills development. This is an opportunity, and I'm a disciple of C.K. Prahalad. His son was my roommate in school, and so I believe in fortune at the bottom of the pyramid. We can invent innovative models in the use of these new technologies in key sectors of the economy and then scale them globally, and the beneficiaries will be the world.
Quick follow-up. Where do you think AI in the context of India will have the greatest impact? For example, healthcare, a sector that you are involved in.
Health. It unquestionably, in one of the, in fact, the session we're having later this afternoon is on this exact issue. In order to understand the power of AI in health, one has to ask the question, how easy is it for someone to get access to a high-quality doctor today? And that access is difficult. So this is the ideal leapfrog moment. You need data access, you need compute, and you need models that are tuned to make sure that we're doing in the best interests of the patient. These are all opportunities, jump ball. We can actually see that collaboration work, and I'm hopeful with ABDM and the initiatives here, combined with what we're doing in the US with health tech ecosystem, there's a chance to collaborate in these areas as we did with the US-India Open Government Dialogue.
Mr. Rangaswamy, as you, and Jonathan, before you come in, another show of hands, how many of you have used any form of AI in the past week?
That's a cheat question. Of course the answer is
Okay, go ahead.
See, that's the group, and an earlier speaker alluded to it, right? They're all using AI and generating a lot of data.
Yeah.
And so there's some questions to be answered on ROI. Who owns that data? I don't know. Right now,
I don't know too.
Yeah, it looks like the models own the data, right?
Yeah.
So I think there might be something regulations-wise and others to kind of provide consumers some benefit of using these systems. So there could be some ROI that's more than just making you more productive, giving you more abundance. Maybe there's also money to be made in using AI and training the data models to be better too.
Yeah, go ahead.
So a great comment to MR on who owns the data. Like when we work with enterprises and governments, we see a strong desire for sovereign AI, where I do think governments and enterprises should own their data. And there are ways to architect these systems within the compliance boundaries of an enterprise so the data doesn't leave the company. I do think a company's data is its moat. I don't think algorithms and compute will be. I think it'll be data. And ideally a data-driven feedback loop where as humans use that company's services, the models keep getting better, the agents keep getting better, and it becomes more useful. And I really liked Aneesh's framing on leapfrogging, right? Like I love that optimism. And in case the tsunami sounded a bit scary, you could surf the tsunami, right? And maybe all of us, I mean, you're all already using AI pretty heavily. I think we have an exciting path ahead. To your point, in addition to healthcare, for India, I'm extremely optimistic about education.
Yeah.
I think there has been no better time to be a student, right? Like, so if you're studying something, right? Like you have an infinitely patient tutor that can talk to you at your level of difficulty.
In the same classroom, This is a brilliant point. Imagine 50 of you students in a class, one teacher delivering the same message in the same tone and with, in his own style. But imagine each of you getting a dedicated tutor, even if you are in a physical classroom. That's the world I believe will perhaps move to.
That's exactly right. And I benefited greatly from my teachers in Chennai, where I grew up, and at Stanford. I still remember my awesome teachers. And now we can scale those teachers to the rest of the world. So we've built this thing called EDU Arena. So if any of you are interested in sort of playing with like an education-focused LLM product, you should check it out. But I think there's never been a better time to be a student or a teacher. A teacher can now create curriculums at like infinite dimensionality, right? It's such a wonderful time to learn and be a lifelong learner.
Absolutely. Indiaspora, and you must have worked with tens or hundreds of Indian founders. I wanted to ask you this question. Frugal Indian engineering, Jugaad as it is called, is there, when we talk about huge amounts of capital needed, do you see somewhere this hope of Indian Jugaad doing the same thing at 1/10th, 1/20th, 1/50th of the cost as we did in our space program, for example?
I agree. I think Aneesh alluded to this thing as well with India, right? Leapfrogging. So there's an ability to leapfrog, but also leapfrog with less money, right? I don't think India can afford to invest $1 trillion in any of these things, but maybe using frugal innovation and leapfrogging as a concept, let's get from LLMs to whatever is next. Maybe it's its own proprietary data, maybe new models that are developed within India, taking advantage of all the Indic languages, taking advantage of speech. So there are many, many ways I think India can leapfrog at lower cost, and knowing our mindset and our DNA at India and with the diaspora, we'll come up with that. We're just at the beginning.
We are at the beginning. Closing comments from both of you. You want to go first, Anish?
No, I'm bullish on collaboration, and I hope that this spirit of solve it here and scale it everywhere is going to be the mindset, so we can see some real impact on societal issues like health and education.
I would say for all the students in the audience, now is the time to work on superintelligence to drive real economic progress. Last year was AI doing tests, getting the gold medal in math. Now it's AI that can actually do real tasks. So I would encourage everybody to study computer science, learn how to build applications on top of LLMs, and the future's bright.
Okay, the future is bright. So if you thought that it takes tens of billions of dollars as it does for a large language model, the future can always allow the language of Jugaad, JLM, a Jugaad language model to come forth from India. I thank the entire panel for their time with us, for sharing those thoughts on that very, very fundamental question, and you, the audience. Thanks very much.